My family decided to go to Miami for Christmas without me, all because my sister didn't want me there. That same day, she and her husband got a surprise. They were kicked out of my house. Now they won't stop calling me. My name is Mateo. I'm 29 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in my older sister's shadow. She's 32 and has always been a star in my parents' eyes. The one who never makes mistakes. The one who deserves everything. Me? I was the extra, the one who had to work twice as hard just to get a second of attention. It's not that they hate me, but I've always felt like I didn't fit into their plans. Everything came to a head a few months ago when they left me out on a Christmas trip to Miami. A trip I had paid for with sweat and tears, just because my sister decided she didn't want me there. We grew up in a house full of noise and memories, but not all of them were good for me. My sister got the best grades, won the awards, and was the one my parents bragged about at every gathering. She's so responsible. My mom would say, she's going to go far. My dad would add that I wasn't bad at school, but I was never enough for them. If I brought home a good grade, they'd say, good, and move on to talk about her. If I did something well, there was always a but behind it. Mateo, that's nice, but look at what your sister did. Over the years, I learned to stay quiet, to expect little, but I never stopped trying. A year ago, my grandfather died. He was the only one who truly saw me. When I was with him, I felt important. He taught me things, listened to me, told me I had something special. When he passed, he left behind a letter and some papers naming me the owner of his house, the same house we grew up in. My parents had moved into a smaller apartment, and my sister, along with her husband and their 4-year-old daughter, moved into the house without paying a dime. No one told me anything, and I didn't say a word. I thought it was some kind of family arrangement, that everyone knew the house was mine, but I didn't want to cause trouble. So I let them live there while I rented a small place close to work. Last year, in September, my mom called me. Mateo, this year we want to do something special for Christmas. We're going to Miami. All of us, your dad, your sister, her husband, their daughter, and us. You in? I got excited. I didn't have much money, but I said yes. I worked extra hours, saved every penny, and by November I had paid my share. The flight, my hotel room, everything. I was proud. For the first time, I felt like I was going to be part of something with them. But then everything fell apart that a week before the trip, my dad called. Mateo, there's a problem. Your sister says the trip would be better if it was more private. She doesn't want you to come. I stayed silent, holding the phone, feeling the air leave my lungs. What did I do wrong? I asked. Nothing, son. She just wants it to be peaceful and says you sometimes complicate things. I couldn't believe it. I complicate things? I paid for everything, Dad. That doesn't count, he sighed. I'm sorry, son. The decision's been made. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, thinking about all the years I had spent being second best, the times my sister looked at me like I was a burden, the times my parents defended her without even listening to me. And now this. They kicked me out of a trip I had paid for, just because she didn't want me there. It was like something inside me broke. I wasn't going to beg them, but I wasn't going to stay silent either. The next day, I made a decision. My grandfather's house was mine, according to documents he left. My sister and her husband had been living there for months for free, without asking, without contributing. They thought it was a family home, but it wasn't. It was mine. I called a locksmith, changed the locks, and left a note on the door. You have 1 week to move your things out. This house is mine, and you're no longer welcome. It wasn't easy. My hands were shaking as I did it, but I knew it was the right thing. For the first time, I was setting a boundary. The day they left for Miami, I was at the house making sure everything was in order. They came back early because my niece got sick and found the new locks. My sister called me, furious. What did you do, Mateo? You left us out on the street. I replied calmly, no, I just took what's mine. You kicked me out of your trip, so I kicked you out of my house. She screamed, insulted me, but I hung up. Since then, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. My mom, my dad, my sister, all demanding explanations, but I just ignore them. For the first time, I feel like I'm in control. It's been weeks since I changed the locks, and my phone is still a silent battleground. Every day, I watch the notifications pile up, missed calls from my mom, messages from my dad asking to talk as a family, and angry voicemails from my sister calling me selfish, heartless for kicking them out AT first. My hands would shake every time I saw their names on the screen, but over time, I learned to ignore them. I turn off my phone at night, put on soft music, and sit on the porch of the house that's now truly mine. For the first time in years, I feel a peace I didn't know was possible. Even if I know it won't last forever, to MY's sister and her husband moved in with my parents in their small apartment. Not my problem. They assumed the house was for everyone, but they never asked. I never told them because I didn't want to start a fight, because I always gave in to avoid drama. But when they left me out of the trip to Miami, something shifted. It wasn't just the money I lost, which wasn't small. It was a message. I wasn't part of the family, at least not how they saw it. So I decided that if they didn't want me in their plans, I didn't want them in mine. The house was my inheritance, my right, and it was time I claimed something for myself. The first few days after kicking them out were strange. I walked through the rooms, noticing traces of their life there. A drawing from my niece on the fridge, a chair her husband had fixed, a plant my sister had placed by the window. I didn't feel hate, just a kind of hollow sadness. I didn't throw everything out right away. I put the drawing in a box, left the chair where it was, and moved the plant to the yard. Little by little, I started making the house my own. I bought a new couch, painted a wall light blue, put my things on the shelves. Each change made me feel like I was finally taking control, something I never had with them. But the silence didn't last long. One morning, while I was drinking coffee, the doorbell rang. It was my mom, alone, red-eyed, holding a bag of bread like that could fix things. "Mateo, please, let's talk," she said. I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to argue at the door. She sat in the kitchen and started. "What you did was harsh. Your sister is devastated. Her daughter doesn't understand why they can't go back. We're family, son. You don't do this to family." I listened without interrupting. When she was done, I calmly replied, "Mom, you all left me out of a trip I paid for. My sister decided she didn't want me there, and you supported her. Is that what family does?" She went quiet, staring at the table. "That's not how it was," she murmured. "Yes, it was," I said. "And now that I took something for myself, I'm the bad guy? It doesn't work that way." We didn't yell. She tried to convince me a little longer, saying my sister was going through a rough time and that they just needed time. "And what about me?" I asked. "When did anyone think about me?" She didn't answer. She got up, left the bread on the table, and walked out. I closed the door and stared at the bag, wondering why they thought a small gesture could erase everything. A week later, I got an official letter. My sister was suing me. She claimed the house was a family inheritance, that I had no right to kick them out, that I was abusing my power. I read the letter and let out a dry laugh. Power? Me? She'd always had the power. And now she wanted to take the one thing that was mine. I called my lawyer that same day, a college friend, a serious guy who always told me to keep my grandfather's documents safe. I told him everything. The trip, the locks, the lawsuit. "Don't worry, Mateo," he said. "If you have the document where your grandfather leaves you the house, they have nothing. It's yours." I emailed him a copy, and he said he'd prepare everything for court. "This won't last an hour," he assured me. That I felt relieved, but tense. I knew the trial would mark the end of something, though I wasn't sure what. The days leading up to the trial were strange. I wasn't sleeping well, not out of fear, but because it felt like everything was about to explode. My sister stopped yelling and started sending long messages, saying she was sorry, that we could work things out. I didn't respond. I didn't believe her words. She had always been that way, apologizing only when she needed something. I tried to keep myself busy. Went to work, talked to friends, fixed things around the house. But every now and then I'd look at my phone and see her attempts to contact me. I ignored them all. The day of the trial came. I put on a decent shirt, grabbed the papers, and went to court with my lawyer. The place was cold, with gray walls and the smell of old paper. My family was there, my sister, her husband, my parents. They sat on the other side of the room, and for a moment our eyes met. My sister looked at me with a mix of anger and pleading, but I looked away. The judge came in, an older man with thick glasses, and the proceedings began. He asked us to identify ourselves, looked over some papers on his desk, then gave the floor to my sister. She stood up, adjusted her hair, and spoke with that voice she uses to convince everyone. "Your Honor, this house is part of our family. My grandfather built it for all of us, not just my brother. He kicked us out without warning, left my daughter without a home, all because of a misunderstanding over a trip. It's not fair. We have rights too." She paused, as if expecting applause. Her husband stood up next, more nervous. "We just want what's best for our family," he said. "Mateo acted on impulse, and now we're paying the price." My mom and dad didn't speak, but they nodded from their seats, looking at me like I was the one to blame for everything. The judge took notes without showing emotion, then looked at me. "Your turn," he said. M.Y. lawyer stood up, calm and composed, and began. "Your Honor, my client Mateo is the sole legal heir of the property according to his grandfather's will. Here is the document." He pulled out the paper, showed it to the judge, and handed it to an assistant. "There's no ambiguity. The house was left to him, and he has every right to decide who lives there. The plaintiff has no legal grounds to claim anything." He sat down, and I remained silent, waiting. The judge reviewed the document calmly, flipping through it while the room stayed silent. My sister shifted in her seat, restless, and whispered something to her husband. The judge looked up and asked, "Does the plaintiff have any proof that the property belongs to her, or that there's a family agreement that contradicts this document?" My sister spoke quickly. "I don't have a paper, but we all knew the house was a family's. My grandfather would never have wanted this." The judge cut her off. "Do you have anything concrete? A will, a contract?" She shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, but it's not fair." He left us on the street. The judge went back to the document and read a part aloud. "I leave my house at 45, Main Street, to my grandson Mateo for him to use as his own." He looked at my sister and said, "Without evidence to the contrary, there's no case." She tried to speak again. "But my daughter, you can't do this to your niece." The judge raised a hand. "This is not about emotions, it's about the law. If there's no further evidence, we're done here." He looked at my lawyer. "Anything else?" My lawyer shook his head. "No, Your Honor, the document speaks for itself." There was a long silence. The judge wrote something down, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Case dismissed. The property belongs to the defendant, Mateo. End of hearing." He struck the gavel, and the sound echoed through the room. My sister went pale, her hands clenched into fists. Her husband placed a hand on her shoulder, but she pushed it away. My parents looked at each other, confused, as if they didn't understand how they had lost. I stood up, grabbed my things, and left with my lawyer. I didn't feel victorious, just relieved. The house was mine, and no one could take it from me. I walked out of the courthouse with the sound of my lawyer's footsteps beside me and the weight of my family's silence behind. I didn't look back, not to seem strong, but because there was nothing left to see. The judge had been clear. My grandfather's papers gave me the house, and my sister's case had no merit. M.Y. lawyer patted me on the shoulder as we walked out. "You did well, Mateo. Now it's truly yours," he said. I gave a small smile, thanked him, and headed for the car. But before I could open the door, I heard my sister's voice shouting, "Mateo, wait!" Her voice cut through the air like a knife. I stopped, hand on the handle, and slowly turned around. There she was, running toward me with her hair messy and eyes blazing with fury. Her husband followed behind, looking unsure what to do, and my parents approached more slowly. As if uncertain whether to get closer, I stood still, waiting. She reached me and stood in front of me, breathing hard. "This isn't right," she began, voice trembling with rage. "How could you do this to your own family? Kicking us out of Grandpa's house like we were trash? You have no heart." I looked at her calmly, without the urgency I used to feel to explain or apologize. "I didn't kick you out like trash," I said firmly. "I took what's mine. Grandpa left the house to me, not to you, not to everyone. And you're the one who kicked me off a trip that I paid for, a trip you claim was family only, because you didn't want me there. So now I'm cutting you out of my life as family. We're even." She went silent for a second, mouth half open, like she couldn't process that the Mateo who always gave in, was talking to her like that. Her husband stepped forward, hands in his pockets, trying to sound reasonable. "Come on, man. Don't be so harsh. We can sit down, talk, work this out. It doesn't have to end like this." I looked him straight in the eyes and shook my head. "There's nothing to work out. You were living in my house without paying a cent, without even asking if it was okay. It's over." He lowered his gaze, unable to respond, and my sister jumped back in. "That house is family. It always has been. Grandpa didn't want this. He didn't want us fighting like this." "If it was about family," I said, "then why didn't you treat me like family when you left me out of the trip? I paid my share, I made an effort, and you decided I wasn't good enough to be there. Don't come talking to me about family when I've always been the extra piece to you." My voice didn't shake, and that surprised me. For the first time, I wasn't begging for a place. I was drawing the line. My parents arrived then, and my mom stood next to my sister with that expression she always used to smooth things over. "Son, please," she began in a soft voice. "We're family. This isn't right. Your sister is devastated. Her daughter doesn't understand why they can't go back home. We can find a solution. It doesn't have to be this harsh." I looked at her, and for a moment I remembered all the times she sided with my sister without even listening to me. "Mom," I said, "you chose your side a long time ago. When she said she didn't want me on the trip, you and Dad did nothing. You left me out like I didn't matter. Now I'm choosing my side, and it doesn't include those who turn their backs on me when it suits them." My dad, who had been silent until then, stepped forward. "Mateo, it wasn't like that. We just wanted everyone to be comfortable. We didn't think you'd take it so badly." That made me laugh. A dry, bitter laugh I couldn't hold in. "Comfortable?" I said, "and my comfort doesn't count? I worked for months to pay for that trip, and you threw it away because she snapped her fingers. Don't tell me I took it wrong, when that's exactly what happened." My sister crossed her arms, looking at me like I was a villain in her story. "You always do this, Mateo. You play the victim. You make everything a drama. We just wanted a peaceful Christmas, and you turn it into this." I stared at her, unblinking. "No, you turn it into this. You decided I didn't fit into your perfect Christmas, and now that I've taken something for myself, I'm the bad guy. I've always been second to you, the one who had to stay quiet and go along with everything. That ends now." My mom tried again, her hands clasped as if she were praying. "Son, think about your niece. She loves you. She doesn't understand any of this. Don't you care?" That hurt, because I did care. My niece was the only pure thing in this whole mess. But I wasn't going to let them use that against me. "I care," I said, "but I'm not going to give in just because you put her in the middle. You and she pushed me out of your family first. This is what comes after." My dad raised his voice, something he rarely did. "Enough, Mateo. We're your parents. We deserve respect. You can't treat us like we don't exist." I looked at him, and for a second, I felt the weight of all those years spent lowering my head. "Respect is earned," I said, "and you lost it when you left me behind. I don't owe you anything." Silence. No one said a word. My sister tightened her lips, her husband stared at the floor, and my parents just stood there like statues. I got in the car, closed the door, and drove off. I didn't look in the rear-view mirror. When I got home, I tossed the keys on the table and sat on the couch. The silence was heavy, but not bad. It was mine. I thought about my niece for a while, about how I'd like to see her someday, but not now, not while my sister was still playing her games. For the first time, there was no guilt or fear. I'd spent my life being overlooked, waiting to be seen. Now I didn't need that anymore. The following days were simple. I fixed up the house a bit, painted a wall, threw out things that weren't mine. I didn't need to fill the space with noise or big plans. I just wanted to be there, in peace. My phone stopped ringing as much, and when it did, I ignored it. It wasn't resentment. It was freedom. After holding on for so long, I finally felt like I could breathe, like my life was truly mine and no one else's.